Okay, so you're having a baby and you know that sleep might be challenging. I'm going to give you all of my best secrets that I have learned over so many years about how to get the longest stretches of sleep for your newborn, how to decrease your anxiety about this whole situation, and also how to keep your baby safe. All the things that I wish that I knew when I was a first time mom. Scan that QR code right there. You're going to get a download that gives you the Coles notes of this presentation so you don't have to take notes and memorize things or screen grab things. It's going to be really, really handy for you. Okay. I'm going to fly through this. And please post your comments and questions in the comment section. Quick note about who I am. So I'm Allison Macklin. I am a sleep expert. I'm a mom. I am also CEO and founder of Sleep of Mind, and I'm a hand in hand certified parenting coach. So what that means is I know a lot about kids. I know a lot about children. I know a lot about child psychology. And it's my passion to be able to help as many families as possible get awesome sleep. All right. So, as we dive really quickly into this, the very first thing that you need to know is how to keep your baby safe. If you've heard about SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome, you know that it's something that's pretty scary to think that all of a sudden your baby could just potentially stop breathing while they're asleep. So, I'm going to give you all of the Cole's notes, all of the best ways to understand how can we prevent or how can we reduce the risks of SIDS. Okay. Now, safe sleep environment is the number one thing that you can really affect when it comes to reducing the risk of SIDS. So there's lots of things here on the screen that you can see in terms of, making sure that you have the baby in the crib and that you've cleared the crib. So just like the picture on the right, we actually don't want all of these things that you typically see in those beautiful nursery pictures. We don't need bumpers, we don't need blankets, we don't need pillows. We actually really don't want those things because they will increase the risks of SIDS. So any type of material that is going to not make it easy for baby to breathe, whether it's via suffocation or not good airflow. Remember that newborn infants, they are very little, they're still developing, and so we don't want to impede their airway in any way. Okay. Also have to make sure that you put baby down on their back every single time, that the surface is flat and not on an incline, that the sheet that is in the bed or like the crib or the bassinet is fitted so there's no loose bedding of any kind. Okay. Um, Here are the unsafe sleep products. And I mean, there are so many more of them, but these give you a really good, broad, general outline of what to look for to not allow your baby to sleep in. So they are fine for during the day when your baby is awake and you're awake, right? Or even at night. But these are not appropriate if your baby starts to fall asleep. These are also not appropriate if you want to put your baby down somewhere for them to take a nap. Okay. So things like seats or swings, things like sort of like the DockATot or any kind of infant positioner. It's the walls around that positioner that are very unsafe. Plus, they need a very flat, firm surface to sleep on. So anything on an incline, anything that's going to sink in, like an adult mattress or a couch, definitely huge no-nos because the weight of your child can create an indent, and if they happen to turn their head, then that absolutely can impede airways. So the next thing here is a list of kind of do's and don'ts. I'm not going to go through everything that's on the screen because you can absolutely take a look and it's going to be in my handout. But go through some of the lesser known things, I think. So absolutely, breastfeeding, if you can, has shown to reduce the risks of SIDS. There are many benefits to breastfeeding. I think that most people are aware of a lot of the health benefits, but one of the lesser known things is that it actually helps to reduce the risk of SIDS as well. Using a pacifier. I think a lot of people have mixed feelings about pacifiers. Some people love them, some people hate them. They also have been shown to reduce the risk of SIDS, keeping that brain body connection going, the brain telling the mouth to keep sucking, etc. That is a really healthy thing that absolutely helps a growing, very immature system have something to do, as well as, of course, it's a common reflex. So that sucking reflex is something that's going to help your baby get longer stretches of sleep and feel like they can soothe, etc. Because that's what they're actually doing right now in the womb. They're actually sucking on their hands, their fingers, and their thumb. So to give them something to calm themselves down with, while also helping to reduce the risk of SIDS, is a really awesome thing. Check out Soothe Beginnings because, in my opinion, they have one of the best pacifiers, reducing the risk of many other things, latex allergies, for one, reducing the risk of finger entrapment, of mold production. So, got to be also careful of which pacifier you purchase. Giving your baby lots of tummy time, strengthening all those muscles when your baby can hold their head up, that actually reduces the risks of SIDS dramatically. So that's a huge milestone, and you want to be able to help them strengthen those muscles so that they can ensure that their airway is cleared. If they do tend to, sleep to one side or whatnot, their airway is very, very small, and it can collapse just like a straw. When you bend that straw and you can't get the liquid out of it anymore, it's exactly like that. So that's why you don't want your baby to fall asleep on any kind of incline. The more that they can strengthen those core muscles, the neck muscles, the better they are going to be able to hold their airway open properly. All right. So the next thing is understanding sleepy cues. Now, this is getting into the section where we're going to talk about all the tips and tricks in terms of how to lengthen your newborn's stretches of sleep. So, you're not going to get stuck in the situation that I was in when I was a new mom, not knowing anything about how to get my daughter to sleep better. She was just always awake, always cranky, always crying, and having a really hard time to fall asleep. So, the very first thing in trying to ensure that your newborn has those nice long stretches of sleep, especially at nighttime, is being really conscious to how tired they're getting in between each sleep period. So, what we call a wake window. So, in between each nap, or at least each little period of sleep, um, you want to make sure that you are able to identify stage one, two, and three of sleepiness. So, stage one is basically turning away from stimulation, turning away from you or someone else that's handling your baby or talking to your baby, or a toy that might be lighting up, etc. Another sign is kind of staring off into the distance in this kind of blank, unfocused stare. So, those are times where if you see this happening, it's a really good indication that you should kind of get things started in terms of a nap or a bedtime put down. Now, stage two, this is where they're really ready for bed. And ideally, they're doing these things when you're going through your nap routine, for example. So, yawning, frowning, pulling at their ears, these are all signs that they are really, really ready to sleep and that they should be offered sleep within the next few minutes. We're actually talking about minutes here. Newborns are extremely sensitive to how long they've been awake for. We're going to get into wake windows in a second. But at this point, you only have minutes. Stage one, you probably have 10 minutes. Stage two, you might have more like 5 minutes. Stage three, if you're noticing these signs, this is now actually approaching being overtired. So we've actually kind of missed that night or nap window, and now a child is beyond tired essentially. So they are going to be exhibiting much much more obvious signs. So crying, arching their back, or being hyperactive, okay? And not just happy, but being extremely, extremely active, and what you would consider hyper. It's still not impossible to get them to go to sleep, in this stage, but it's definitely going to be harder. So if you've gotten to this stage, maybe by accident, you didn't see some of their cues prior, or maybe you're out and about, maybe you're at a party or a baby shower or something like that, that is very stimulating. You might get to stage three a lot faster than you normally do staying at home. So if you're, seeing these signs, I think that's just a cue for you to know, okay, it actually might take more effort to get my child down. Okay. So the next section is stuff that you're going to want to make sure that you have if your child is very fussy and you're finding that sleep is coming, in a really difficult fashion. You're going to want to take care of these things. So not you don't always have to do these things. Okay, if you've got a really great sleeper and they just naturally sleep anywhere all the time, have really great 2 hour, 3 hour stretches of sleep, you don't have to be as diligent as what we're talking about here in some of these things. But if you have a sleeper who is not a great sleeper, then you absolutely do want to tackle some of these things, especially just trying to manage them as best you can for a very short period of time, so that you can get sleep back on track, and then you can go out and get back to some sort of normalcy. So the sleep environment, that's more so what I'm really referring to. These are the core principles to how any person of any age can get better sleep. Okay, it's not that they can't sleep in conditions that aren't these. It's that a human will get better sleep if they sleep in pitch black, if they have white noise, and if it's a cool temperature. Okay, because we still have a lot of those caveman days, within our physiology, and so we do prefer, our bodies do feel safer when we're in an environment like that to do a very vulnerable thing, which is to fall asleep. So pitch black, one of the additional reasons beyond the safety is the light will actually tell the brain to stay awake and to keep producing wakeful hormones and things like that. So that's not what we want when it's time for a nap during the day. So if your baby is really struggling with sleep, you do want to put them down in a pitch black environment where there is no light whatsoever. If you have to have a light for whatever reason, for feeding or whatnot, then especially if it's at nighttime for diaper changes, then make sure it's a red night light. So the color red, when it comes to light, is actually the only color that does not interfere with melatonin production and basically telling the brain to wake up or to stay awake. So if you do need some sort of light, make sure it's a red light. Doesn't have to be any kind of fancy light, just as long as the bulb is red. You also want to make sure that you're in a cool temperature, because again, cooler temperatures help to facilitate the sleep onset. That's when the body is, getting prepped for sleep. And then also the white noise. So the white noise is, twofold. For a newborn specifically, you want to do everything that you can to mimic the environment that they were just in. So in the womb, it was dark. There was a lot of noise, a lot of white noise happening, and that is how the baby's going to feel safest. As I said, sleep is a very vulnerable state for a human, especially a newborn baby who's just getting used to this new world. So you're going to want to recreate the womb as much as you possibly can by having that pitch black white noise type of environment. Actually, the best type of noise is brown noise. If you have a white noise machine that can actually give you different selections of white noise, brown noise would actually be the best. And keep that 6 feet away from the crib or bassinet, making sure that it's no more than 60 decibels in the crib or bassinet. You can get a quick decibel meter on your phone. Lots of them are free. You can put that in the bassinet and turn your sound machine on and just make sure that the reading doesn't read any more than 60. 60 is room tone, meaning my voice right now. So that's what we want to do. We want to recreate the sleep environment or that womb kind of environment when it comes to sleep if your baby's having lots of trouble sleeping. Um, the newborn wake windows, that is basically calculating how much time your baby has been awake in between sleep periods. And you want to use those in combination with the sleepy cues that we had just talked about. So it is important to watch your baby in terms of, do they look like they're getting tired? But of course, we can't stare at our baby 100% of the time. And sometimes we miss those cues. So you also want to make sure that you're taking note of what time they woke up, and what time roughly they're probably going to need to go down again. So, for example, if you have a 0 to 8 week old, they can't really stay awake for very long. Their wake window is actually less than an hour, and I say that kind of term less than an hour because you're going to get to know via the sleepy cues how long your baby is capable of staying awake. A 6 week old might only be able to stay awake for 45 minutes, for example, before you start seeing some of those sleepy cues. So I encourage you to get to know your baby, get to know some of their signs so that you can get a little bit more precise with those wake windows. But what the wake window means is, if you have an 8 week old, then you want to make sure that you're offering them sleep at least, at most an hour after they last woke up. So if they woke up at 2 p.m., then you want to make sure that they're going back into the bassinet or, back into the baby carrier or whatever it is, wherever it is that you're going to have them sleep at 3 p.m. So it's not that they have to be sleeping by 3 p.m. if they woke up at 2. It's just that we want to be offering that sleep at 3 p.m. And ideally, you have the environment set up as well. So they're in pitch black by 3 p.m. with the white noise on and all that kind of stuff. Then there's the sleep and feed routine. I'll go through that really quickly, but it is absolutely something that you're going to want to make sure that you have your pediatrician weigh in on as well, because what I've noted down here are for the average baby who is growing, according to their growth curve, who doesn't have any weight concerns, any feeding concerns outlined. So if your doctor is concerned in any way, then please follow their advice. But basically, this is the sleep feed routine if your baby is all of the green check marks that we've just discussed, that it will actually help them sleep those longer stretches if they get into a pattern. Okay, so at 4 weeks, you can actually start a sleep routine, meaning like a nap routine or a bedtime routine, just doing the exact same thing, in the same order every single time before you put them down into their bassinet. Okay. So they're able at this age to start recognizing patterns and they'll be able to tell, oh, okay, I'm going into this room and I'm having my diaper changed and then I'm having, pajamas put on and then a swaddle and all these things. And maybe there's music. If they start to see that these things are happening in the same order every single time, they're going to start to expect sleep, and their body's actually going to start to prep themselves for sleep as they're going through the routine. So sleep onset becomes a lot easier. So around 6 weeks, you're going to actually want to move bedtime up to 7 p.m. And morning wake to 7 a.m. So a 12-hour stretch, 7 to 7, where basically any wake ups are going to be handled in the dark with that red night light that we had talked about. So after 7 p.m., you treat all the wake ups as if they are a night wake, versus in the daytime, you're going to treat the wake ups as, playtime. You take them out, you change them, you feed them, doing tummy time, all of that stuff in the bright daylight. You can be outside or by a window, and all of that daylight during the daytime is going to help set their circadian rhythm so that they don't have any day night confusion. Okay. But we don't necessarily want to nap them in the daylight if they're having sleep problems. All right. So when we start moving at 6 weeks to this bedtime at 7 p.m., what that's going to do is also help you with the feed schedule. So as you can see, the last point around here, around 6 weeks, or basically when so what the last point is saying that around 6 weeks or whenever your general practitioner, your family doctor, your pediatrician gives you the green light, you want to feed every 3 hours during the day and every 4 hours at nighttime. So what that means is you are actually um, going to at nighttime, you're actually going to be waking your baby up at those specific times in order to get ahead of hunger. Now, in the very beginning, it might be really difficult to, stick to every 3 hours during the day, every 4 hours at night. Just try and lengthen the amount of time that you have between the feeds in order to eventually get there. You don't have to get there all at once if that feels really difficult given where you started. Some babies need to feed more often and some don't, right? So it is something that you can slowly work towards as you go, just adding 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, in terms of the space between each feed. All right. So, pro tips for newborns who hate the bassinet. My daughter, okay? So, my daughter would not sleep anywhere that was a hard surface that was safe for sleep. It was the hardest thing in the world, and I didn't know all the tips that I do now in order to get her to go to sleep in the bassinet. So, the very first thing that you need to try, if you haven't tried this already, if your baby, basically you're rocking your baby, and I've got my little doll here to illustrate. So, if you're rocking your baby and they fall asleep, and then you put them down into the crib or in the bassinet, and all of a sudden they just wake up, right? That is so common. That's what happened to me all the time. Wake up instantly as soon as they touch the mattress. Even though you're, putting them down extremely slowly, it doesn't matter. They can feel it, right? So what you want to try is try and put them down differently. So instead of, I'm trying to show you on the camera here, instead of putting them down like this, okay, we want to have them up like this, okay, and then we want to slowly rotate them and roll them down this way, okay. So they're going to go into the bassinet. Sorry, this is really hard to show you guys. They're going to go into the bassinet feet first, and then as with your body here, right? Rotate into the bassinet. So essentially what's happening, so you've got them, essentially what's happening, instead of them going this way because they're going to feel like they're falling, which triggers the startle reflex. We don't want that. Instead of going this way, they go down this way. And then once you've gotten to the very bottom and their feet are touching, then we can slowly rotate them and then slowly rotate this way. Okay. So that there isn't that big sort of like this motion. So changing the way that you put your baby into the crib or bassinet, that can be a game changer for some people. Now, sometimes, like during the 24-hour period at night, it might be really easy to do it that way. During the day, they might hate it. They might be more awake and more aware of the situation. So you might not be able to be that successful during the daytime. That's why there's lots of other things that you can do. Baby wearing is a huge, favorite of mine. I love telling people to baby wear all the time as much as they possibly can. Now, you can do it just being in a dark room and swaying in the dark room if you want to. You can do it in a rocking chair. You can do it in an airplane. You can do it while trying to get errands done and things like that. Things around the house, going shopping, all that kind of stuff. It really is very, very flexible in terms of basically putting your baby in the carrier and then letting your baby just fall asleep whenever they feel like they need sleep. So you're able to go for long walks and hikes and stuff like that. You're able to go to the mall. Just let them wake up and fall asleep as needed. Of course, you want to be somewhere where you can change their diaper and feed them and whatnot. But generally, yeah, if you just bring your diaper bag, you should be able to have everything you need in order to take care of them for the next few hours. And so it's a really great way during that newborn stage to still get them the appropriate amount of sleep. And as I said, it's okay if you don't have that pitch black white noise situation. If you're out somewhere really loud, you're probably gonna have white noise anyways. It's okay if they're not sleeping in pitch black all the time. But as I said, if you're having issues with sleep, then you might want to try and stay home for a few days to try and get sleep back on track. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of trying to get out of the house as much as you can during the daytime because the nights can be long. There can be lots of night wakes, or there can be just a feeling of like, man, I'm in this alone. I don't have anyone to talk to and all that kind of stuff. So it is awesome to be able to at least a few times a week get out with the baby carrier as much as you can. Of course, the stroller is always an option, and if you have a bassinet stroller, even better. That's even safer. Now, yoga ball. The reason why I have that in there is for the babies who like to be rocked, like my daughter did. Some babies like to be rocked like this, like bounced, basically. And so you're doing this and walking, the whole time. Sitting on a yoga ball, one of those big oversized ones, is a lifesaver. So again, you can do that in the dark, bouncing on your yoga ball, and then do the transfer that I talked about, putting your baby into the bassinet that way. The car seat, so that bucket seat, is really the last resort, I would say, just because It's not a flat sleep surface, so it's not going to be as safe as the other options. Now, the baby wearing is a completely different option, so that is something that if you're baby wearing appropriately and the wrap or the baby carrier is fitting the way it's supposed to, then it is safe for sleep. But the car seat is not. There's never going to be a way that your baby can be safe in there for sleep, and so it can be a way to help get your baby to fall asleep, and then you transfer them afterwards. So you really don't want them to be in the seat for very long, and ideally, there's also someone who is sitting right next to them as well. But just watching your baby is not always a fail-safe option because just as I said with that straw, just the bending of that straw, the airway could cut off the air. And if they're sleeping, they might not actually show any signs of distress. Okay. So as I said, you've got to be really careful with that one. It is definitely not something that you want them to sleep for like hours and hours in. All right. So my last but best tip for getting awesome sleep is again, making sure that your baby feels like they are still in the womb and it's with a swaddle. Okay. So in the womb, they are in this sort of tucked up position, right? And as I said, they are able to self soothe on their fingers. They're able to scratch their face, they're able to suck their thumb. And all of those great things. Now, what they don't have in the womb is the startle reflex, meaning like the feeling like they are falling backwards. Remember when I was talking about this situation? So that is a reflex that happens when a baby feels like they're falling, and the doctor will do that test with you. When they feel like they're falling backwards, or when there's a very loud noise, they do this startle reflex. It's hard to see on the camera, right? They go like that. Okay. So when they feel like they're falling backwards, they're going to have this startle reflex. It's called the moral reflex. That's very natural. And when they're asleep on their back, what happens sometimes is when they go through the various stages of sleep, there's 4 stages to fall from, awake to a deep sleep. Going through those stages, they can actually feel like they're falling backwards, even though they're asleep. So you'll see a baby in their sleep all of a sudden have the startle reflex. And if they're not swaddled, then they can startle themselves awake. So the challenge with that is if your baby is not a great sleeper and you have worked so hard to get them to go to sleep, the last thing that you want them to do is startle themselves awake. If you have an amazing sleeper and they are just a dream and they can sleep for hours and hours anywhere, then I wouldn't be as concerned about the moral reflex because it's probably not disrupting their sleep very much. So you probably don't really need to swaddle as much as someone else with a baby who is constantly waking themselves and then now they're crying and now they're overtired and you're going crazy. All right. So if you have a baby who, you want to make sure that they still feel like they're in the womb, in order to facilitate those longer stretches of sleep, you're going to want a swaddle. Now, the most amazing thing about my swaddle, the one that I created with Sleep of Mind, is so many things. I can't even pack all of the things into this seminar. But number one, it calms the moral reflex, but in an arms up position. Okay. So that's better than the arms down positions because of what you're seeing there on the screen. Because of the way that baby is in the womb, most babies are going to be very accepting of an arms up swaddle. Some babies are okay with the arms down ones, the ones that kind of look like a little burrito. Some babies don't really care what type of swaddle they're in. But most babies are going to be okay with the arms up swaddle. Some of them are okay with both. Some of them only like the arms up swaddle. And this is what I found through all of my years as a sleep expert, helping families, doing lots and lots of consultations and whatnot, and working with families. That's the overwhelming response that I've seen. So that's why we chose this format of swaddle to develop. There's a whole bunch of other awesome things like the safe zippers and the Ocotex and GOTS certified breathable cotton and all those things. If you remember everything that we said about SIDS and how it's a really scary thing to think that your baby might just all of a sudden stop breathing, you're gonna be so happy that your baby is sleeping, right? Because this swaddle really does a lot to mimic the womb and help your baby feel safe to sleep. But then you might feel really anxious that, oh my gosh, they're getting so much sleep, but I don't know if they're breathing, right? And you don't want to check on them because you don't want to wake them up if it took you so long to get them to go to sleep. And watch the comparison of these two swaddles. So the Sleep of Mind swaddle is on the right, a standard one is on the left, and you can see every time that chest rises and falls, you'll be able to see the reflection changing. All right. So you'll be able to see your baby breathing on any baby monitor that has night vision, which is pretty much all of them. um, that night vision light that comes from the camera shining down onto your child, that is actually going to be reflected just like a million little mirrors in there. Every time the torso rises and falls, you'll see a change in that reflection. Some people call it like a shimmer effect. And that's going to tell you that your baby is okay or maybe not okay. If you don't see the light reflecting at all, if it seems to be stagnant like an image instead of a video, that tells you either something's wrong with your camera or something might be wrong with your baby and that you should go in and check. You'll also be able to notice their standard pattern of breathing. If they're at an elevated, maybe breathing a lot faster than normal. Again, there's a few respiratory illnesses that can cause things like that. Again, it's an indication that you might want to go in and check on them. But this basically just gives you a little bit more information in terms of how they're doing. It's an awesome swaddle because it helps to give those longer stretches of sleep. The band that's across the tummy there, just like the one that's on here. It's actually affixed at the back, so it's foolproof. You can't get it wrong in terms of how you put it on. And the band also helps to give a little bit of a gentle hug around the midsection, again, to help your child feel safe and secure, like the compression that they get in the womb. Okay, and there's only one size from 0 to 3 months, so no sizing up required. You don't have to keep buying a new size every few weeks as your baby grows, unlike the swaddle on the left hand side there. So, if you haven't guessed, at Sleep of Mind, we provide peace of mind via our breathing reassurance sleepwear. So, we have swaddles, we have sleep sacks, which is the next stage after the swaddle. After your baby is around 3 months and they start showing signs of rolling, you want to get them into a sleep sack. And then we also just launched our pajamas. So, from 0 to 12 months, if you're the type of parent who doesn't want to do the swaddle, or also if you have a baby who hates swaddles, which is a small percentage, but they exist, then we make the pajamas for the folks who don't do swaddles as a newborn. And there's also some folks who don't do sleep sacks either. So that's great. You can still get the benefits of the breathing reassurance sleepwear and that nice little wrap that helps babies feel more safe and secure through the pajamas that go all the way to 12 months. They're convertible pajamas, so they actually have fold over cuffs and feet so that you can have bare feet or you can have covered feet. You can have hands free or hands covered, and you don't have to deal with those mitts, right? So no scratching of the face and of their eyes. And then you don't lose the mitts, like they don't bite them and take them off and all that kind of stuff. So the magical thing that I'm doing for everyone who has stayed all the way to the very end of this sleep seminar is giving you guys an awesome discount that we really don't give in many places. So typically, our sleepwear is $64, but because you've stayed to the very end of this amazing seminar that's going to give you so much sleep and so much less anxiety when you have your newborn, you can use the code newborn10 and you'll save $10. Now, that is also free shipping included. So you're really only paying the $54, which is amazing given the fact that our sleepwear is premium. We've got Ocotex certification, meaning no harmful chemicals. We don't use any dyes. So you see that off-white color, that's actually just gone through an organic boiling process. So if your baby is self-soothing through the sleepwear, which is that's exactly what they do, right? They're going to start, sucking on their fingers, etc., through the sleepwear. Um, and being able to kind of self-soothe themselves back to sleep, right? That's exactly what they want to do. That's why a lot of those Houdini babies they break out of the other type of swaddles. Yeah, they're not ingesting any harmful chemicals. We've gone way beyond most brands that are on the market because we really care. I'm a parent, and my two co-founders are parents as well, and we really wanted to make sure that we were putting something out there that we ourselves had always wished that was on the market when our children were at this age. Um, I could go on and on and on about all the safety features and all the added things that make our product a lot safer than others, but I'm going to let you go check that out and go check out our website, sleepofmind.com. You can also follow us on social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, we're there. And please, any questions that you have, answer them in the comments, or sorry, ask them in the comments. Ask all your questions in the comments. I will personally be answering them myself. And you can always feel free to DM us on any of our social platforms to be able to ask any questions about our products or sleep. Thank you so much for joining, and I wish you all the best in your newborn days.